So if you've ever been in the situation where you don't have your instrument to practice, or you're just wondering how can you practice without your instrument and improve your musicianship all the time, then this is the video for you. I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy away and let's jump into it. Hey, Brent here from Learn Jazz Standards. These tips are really great, especially if you're learning how to play jazz or want to improve your jazz improvisation, but don't have your instrument. The good news is that we actually can improve our jazz playing quite a bit away from our instrument and have lots of results, especially when we get back to our instrument again. So let's go over the 10. The first way to practice without your instrument is listen to a playlist of a song or a jazz standard that you're trying to learn. This is actually a massive game changer when you're going to learn new songs, is if you create a playlist on, say, Spotify or YouTube ahead of time and actually give yourself lots of time to process the song, listen to a bunch of different versions, then you're gonna know the song so much better so that when you actually get back to your instrument, that song is familiar and it's already second nature. This is something that a lot of people actually skip doing. They're suggested to learn a new song and they go to learn it barely having listened to it, and therefore they don't really memorize it for the long term. They lose it. They don't really know it that well. So create a playlist while you're driving, while you're exercising, wherever you go, listen to that playlist. 10, 15, 20 different versions of one song, and you're gonna know it a lot better. The second way to practice without your instrument is to pick just one version of a song or a jazz standard you're trying to learn and listen to that on loop over and over and over again. So if you're already listening to a playlist of a lot of different versions of a song you're trying to learn, a good idea is to go to the original version of that song or a version that you really like of the song that you really want to internalize deeply, and literally just put that song on loop for as long as you have time for. It could be on your commute, it could be while you're exercising, it could be while you're doing chores in the house. You might drive some people around you crazy if you don't have your earbuds in, but you're just listening to that same version of the song over and over again and getting very intimately familiar with it. And you'll find that when you get back to your instrument, the way that melody is phrased, the way the chords are played, some of the solos, they're all gonna kind of seep in and you're gonna understand the song so much better for when you go to learn it. The third way to practice without your instrument is to sing along with the melody of the song you're listening to. So perhaps now you've been listening to that one version of that jazz song over and over and over again. Well, at this point, you should be getting a good idea of the phrasing of the melody and how it sounds. And so a great practice is just to audiate what you're hearing in your ears. What it does is it creates this connection with your body and your ears so that you're able to feel the music a lot better. And a lot of learning music by ear, which is especially a good thing to do for jazz, or memorizing songs, a lot of it has to do with this ability to feel the music that we're hearing. And so even if you're not actually playing your instrument, the singing process helps you do that. On top of that, when you're able to sing along with a melody or whistle or hum, you're proving that you've internalized the melody and the way that it is played. It's sort of like proof that you actually do know it. The fourth way to practice without your instrument is to learn the lyrics of the song or jazz standard that you're listening to. So learning lyrics is a really great idea for helping you internalize a melody as well as making it stick around for the long term. If you think about some of the most catchy songs that get played over and over and over in your head, oftentimes they do have lyrics to them. There's singers singing them, and there's a reason for that. There's just some kind of connection that we have with the human voice and words and language that sticks with us for the long term. So if a jazz song has lyrics, it can be a great idea to learn those lyrics, not only to help you learn the melody, but also to help you make a connection with it deeply. Now, if a song doesn't have lyrics, as we know, there are plenty of jazz standards that do not have lyrics, like say Charlie Parker bebop heads. You can actually create your own lyrics, and that's really a great way to internalize a melody and make it your own as well. The fifth way to practice away from your instrument is to listen to a solo that you want to learn. So one of the best ways to improve as an improviser, certainly a jazz improviser, is to learn solos by ear from recordings, and then of course be able to play them on your instrument. It's sort of like you're downloading some musical language that you can say and hopefully turn into something of your own later. But one of the classic mistakes mistakes is someone going to learn a solo, but actually not being very familiar with that solo in the first place. So it's sort of an uphill climb when you're trying to like learn it by ear and be able to hear it and play it on your instrument at the same time. So a great idea is to take that solo, create a loop of just that solo, export it as an MP3 or a track, and just play that over and over and over again, the same as you were listening to the playlist or the whole songs you were listening to before. Go around doing whatever you're doing, driving in the car, working out, working around the house, just listening to that one solo over and over and over again. The idea, of course, is that you're repeating it and internalizing it and hearing it really deeply so that you get to know it intimately before you start learning it on your instrument. The sixth way to practice away from your instrument is to sing along with a solo that you're trying to learn. So you've been listening to this solo on loop over and over and over again, the same as it's helpful to sing a melody to get to know it and to prove that you've internalized it. You can start singing or humming or whistling along with the solo that you're actually learning. This way you're creating that connection from your ear to your body, you're audiating, you're getting to know it better, and you're gonna be able to play it so much easier on your instrument if you're able to do this. It could also be helpful if you have trouble singing along with solos because notes are going by a little bit too quickly, to use a slowdowner tool. Like you could use the settings tab on YouTube to slow down a track. You can use slowdowner tools like Amazing Slowdowner and slow that track down so that you can actually sing with it at a slower speed instead of the original speed. The seventh way to practice without your instrument is to work on deep listening skills. There's a lot of deep listening skills, but I'll give you a few that are really cool and helpful. Pick one song that you really like. It doesn't have to be one that you're trying to learn, just a jazz standard or a jazz song that you really like, and go through a series of different steps. The first time you listen through the song, listen to only one of the instruments. This could be the saxophone player, the trumpet player, whoever is playing the lead role, perhaps playing the melody. Like just listen to them throughout the entire track, from the melody to the solos, and so on and so forth. The second time you listen through the song, listen to maybe a more supportive instrument. Say it's the comping instrument like the piano, and really just focus all of your attention on the piano. Then the third time, listen to just the bass player. The fourth time, the drummer, and then fill in the blank with what other instruments are actually playing in the band. When you do this, you're actually going to hear things that you never heard before. You're going to hear the piano or the guitar player comping rhythmic patterns that you weren't paying attention to before. You're going to hear the bass player playing in a certain way. You're going to hear the way the soloist plays different parts just a little bit differently than before. It's this critical listening that builds this attention and builds your ear to understand and feel jazz music on a deeper level. Not only that, it actually is a lot of fun to do this. It can get really geeky and nerdy, and diving deep into listening like this actually helps you appreciate the music even more. The eighth way to practice away from your instrument is to practice keeping the form with recordings. So one common issue that musicians have is losing the form when they're improvising or comping or even playing the melody and not knowing where they are, and it becomes this embarrassing moment, especially if you're playing with other musicians. Well, one way to help combat this and practice so that this doesn't actually happen is simply just to listen to recordings and follow along with the form. So for example, if you identify that a song is an AABA song form, simply just going A, B, when the different parts are happening, whether it's during a solo or the melody, helps you build more awareness around where you're actually at in the song form. You can also do other practice with this, like every single measure you're snapping your fingers, or every 2 measures you're snapping your fingers, or every 4 measures you're snapping your fingers. Or you can simply just sway your body and feel the music a certain way. You could feel it in halftime, right? Different ways you can feel that in your body. You can practice this just by listening to recordings and keeping track with where the song form actually is. You could take this a lot further if you want and literally name what chord you're at in the song. These are all just mental exercises that you can do that helps you be more aware, helps you think a little bit more critically, and ultimately this kind of practice will create a more natural environment for you when you actually go to perform live. The 9th way to practice away from your instrument is a classic one, but I have a slightly different approach and understanding to it. And that would be to work on intervallic ear training. This is also called the fundamentals of ear training. It's, can you identify a minor third ascending? Can you sing a major triad? Do, do, da. Can you sing a minor major seventh chord? Do, da, 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 right? It's that kind of a thing. Can you sing it? Can you hear it? Can you recognize it? And so there's a lot of different ways you could do this. You could do it just the way I was doing it now, which is just asking yourself to sing these sorts of things. You could do it by hearing a sound in your natural environment and then calling upon yourself to sing, you know, a perfect fourth above or below in pitch. But fundamentals of ear training can be helpful, but not really for the ways that most people talk about it, where they're thinking if they're able to identify a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth, well, then they're going to be able to play that so much more easily on their instrument. Instead, what I think practicing the fundamentals of ear training does the most is it just helps strengthen your ear, right? It's like you're exercising a muscle. And when you go on to do other things, whether it be learning melodies by ear or solos by ear off a recording, it becomes easier for you to do that because you're strengthening that quickness within your ear. You're strengthening that critical listening aspect of your ear, which is super valuable for improvisation and, of course, learning musical material. The 10th way to practice away from your instrument is to plan a practice session. Now, hear me out. I do believe that this is also practicing, because if the goal of practicing is to improve our playing and our musicianship, then having an actual plan is practicing in and of itself. It's part of the time that is spent to make our practice session more efficient and more valuable. Most of us do not go into practice sessions having any plan whatsoever. And unfortunately, this is a huge mistake. The most basic way you can do this is literally just plan out what you're going to practice, which is, I'm gonna practice this in the first 10 minutes and this in the second 30 minutes and so on and so forth. Like actually having the things you're going to practice in place, written down somewhere. But another way you can go about it is to just think critically, like what is it that I actually do need to be practicing? Am I practicing things right now that actually aren't helping me very much? Is there something that I can be doing better? For example, listening to a recording of myself and analyzing what I'm doing right or wrong, and then building a strategy based off of that. This is something that I have my inner circle students do all the time. They're listening back to themselves, thinking critically, and actually creating plans for themselves for how to improve their actual jazz playing. And when they do this, they're improving a lot faster than if they didn't have a plan at all, or they weren't aware of their strengths and weaknesses. It sounds kind of boring to talk about, yet it's the things that the best jazz musicians in the world have mastered, the art of practicing. So if you're able to create the most optimal practice sessions for yourself, then that is great practice away from your instrument, because when you actually do get to your instrument, you're going to improve so much more with an optimal practice session specifically for you. Now, you may have noticed a lot of the stuff I'm talking about revolves around learning songs and learning solos. But how do jazz musicians go about learning literally hundreds of jazz standards and songs and actually memorize them? Well, I have a video on the screen right now talking about how to learn hundreds of jazz standards. I literally learned 100 jazz standards in 1 year, and I go over some of the thought processes and strategies that I used to do that. So click on that video on the screen right now if you'll find that helpful. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.